come you're a Martian?
Of course not.
Well, he's gonna ask you how come you know so much.
Ask who?
Before Bewitched, before I Dream of Jeannie, one little show launched TV's obsession with supernatural sitcoms, and it came packed with secrets. A lion that smashed through a glass wall, a spaceship nearly killing its own stuntman, and a star who bitterly regretted every episode. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about My Favorite Martian. Fact 1. The script nobody wanted.
Well.
He's in love.
Oh, come on. George?
Most television shows get made because a producer or a network falls in love with an idea. The story behind My Favorite Martian is almost the exact opposite of that. The pilot script was written by a man named John L. Green, and by the time producer Jack Chertok came across it, it had been read and passed over by what seemed like every single producer in Hollywood. The William Morris Talent Agency, which was putting together the deal, had the script sitting in a pile with all the others. And according to a 1963 article in the Rocky Mountain News, it had a very specific habit of ending up in the same place every time someone looked through that pile. It always wound up at the bottom of the stack. That is not a small thing in the television business. Scripts that land at the bottom of a stack tend to stay there. Nobody pulls them back out. Nobody champions them. They just sit there while other projects move forward. When Chertok found Green's script and expressed genuine interest in it, the agency men were stunned. They told him plainly that the premise had been looked at and rejected by every producer who had ever come across it, and that it always wound up at the bottom of the stack. Chertok's response was simple and completely unexpected. He said, "That's why I want it." And that was that. The show that would launch an entire decade of fantasy-themed sitcoms, including Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie, came into existence because one producer decided that being universally ignored was actually a recommendation. Chertok then paired Green with his own production company, went to CBS, and sold them a show that everyone else had thrown away. The rest, as they say, is television history. Fact 2. Walston regretted every episode.
What's so funny? She likes my Martian accent. She thinks it's very sexy.
Ray Walston was already a respected and accomplished performer when he took the role of Uncle Martin on My Favorite Martian. He had spent years on Broadway, most famously playing the devil in the original production of Damn Yankees, and he had built a solid career as a character actor in films. By the time the show came along in 1963, he had appeared in major Hollywood productions like South Pacific, The Apartment, and Tall Story. He was, in short, the kind of actor who people in the industry took seriously. And then he became a Martian on a CBS sitcom, and he later admitted that he never really forgave himself for it. According to Walston's own statements and records now preserved in the show's IMDb page, he took the role of Uncle Martin purely for the money. That part is not unusual. Plenty of actors take jobs for financial reasons, especially when the pay is good and the work is steady. What is more surprising is the depth of his regret about it. Walston felt strongly that the role typecast him in a way that followed him around for years afterward and prevented him from landing the kind of substantial dramatic work he had been building toward before the show. When you spend 3 years playing a Martian with retractable antennae in a half-hour comedy, certain doors in Hollywood quietly close. That said, the situation was not entirely without silver linings. Walston has also said that he genuinely enjoyed working alongside Bill Bixby, and the two men became lifelong friends over the course of the show's run. Walston ultimately found his way back to critically acclaimed dramatic work decades later, winning 2 Emmy Awards for his role as Judge Henry Bone on the series Picket Fences in the 1990s. Fact 3. Bill Bixby's legendary first line.
Martian, I don't have time to straighten out the problems of all of Georgia's friends.
Most actors preparing for an important audition or casting interview spend time rehearsing what they are going to say, how they are going to present themselves, and what kind of first impression they want to make. Bill Bixby apparently did not need to do any of that. According to accounts documented in the show's production history, Bixby arrived for his meeting with producer Jack Chertok, walked in, shook the man's hand, and said, "Hello, I'm Bill Bixby." It is about as straightforward an introduction as a person can make. What made it memorable is what happened next. Chertok, without missing a beat, replied, "No, you're not. You're Tim O'Hara." And just like that, Bixby had the role. What is interesting about this story is what it tells us about how clearly the producers had already envisioned their lead character. Tim O'Hara, the young newspaper reporter who discovers and shelters a stranded Martian, was a specific type of person in their minds, and something about the way Bixby carried himself in that room told Chertok immediately that he was looking at him. At the time, Bixby was 29 years old and had spent most of his career in supporting roles, including a regular spot on The Joey Bishop Show. He had shown flashes of strong comic timing, but he had not yet had a vehicle that really put him front and center. My Favorite Martian changed that entirely. Bixby would later reflect that working alongside Ray Walston during those 3 seasons was essentially the most important on-the-job training of his acting life, saying that the growth he experienced as a performer from the first year to the 3rd was due directly to what he learned from his co-star. Fact 4. A near-fatal spaceship stunt.
Are you through? Now, what are you waiting for me to say? Take me to your leader?
The spaceship at the center of My Favorite Martian was not exactly a simple prop. When it was first built, the production team constructed it out of wood and painted it silver to give it a metallic look. But that version was eventually replaced with a far more substantial object. The ship was recast using a stone mold and built out of fiberglass with a steel inner skeleton. By the time the new version was complete, the prop weighed upward of 400 pounds, which created a very serious challenge whenever a scene required it to fly. In the Season 1 episode called Rocket to Mars, the plot requires the spaceship to be lifted into the air, away from a carnival carousel where it had been put on display. To accomplish this, the production team used 3 steel cables to hoist the ship. That may sound like more than enough support for a 400-pound object, but during filming, one of those cables snapped. At the time the cable broke, the ship was suspended nearly 60 feet in the air. Ray Walston's stand-in, who had been riding inside the cockpit for the shot, was in real danger. The incident was serious enough that when the production team regrouped to restart the shot, Walston made clear he would not allow his stand-in to be put back inside the ship again. The cockpit was left empty for the remainder of the sequence, and the production worked around the absence of anyone inside. It was a close call that nobody who was there that day likely forgot. The fact that the show was built around so many elaborate special effects meant that these kinds of risks were part of the daily reality of filming it. Fact 5. A lion smashed through a wall.
Well, as long as I don't wear a sign on my back saying I am a Martian, who would ever know?
During the 3rd and final season of My Favorite Martian, the production was filming episode 105, an episode titled Stop the Presses, I Want to Get Off. The script called for a scene involving a real live lion, and it is at this point that Ray Walston's instincts turned out to be considerably better than everyone else's. According to accounts that both Walston and Bixby told on separate talk shows over the years, Walston had been the one originally written into the scene with the animal. He refused, flatly and without much negotiation. Walston was well aware of the risks that came with working around large animals on a set, and he wanted no part of it. The script had to be rewritten, and Bill Bixby, who was apparently far more confident about the situation, volunteered to step in and do the scene instead. The lion in question was reportedly old and had no teeth, which gave the impression that it was safe to work near. The scene simply called for Bixby to see the lion and react with a bit of a shake. Then, while the cameras were rolling, the lion gave a sudden roar, lunged forward, and crashed directly through the glass partition that was supposed to be separating it from Bixby. Glass flew in every direction. The lion ended up unhurt, just standing there, blinking. Bixby, on the other hand, was gone. Ray Walston later said with some amusement that he could not find Bixby for 3 hours after it happened. Bixby's own version of events was slightly different. He said he did indeed flee immediately, sprinting up a ladder into the rafters above the soundstage, only to find Walston already up there, having decided very wisely not to go anywhere near the ground. Fact 6. Wrong copyright, year for 7 episodes.
Why, you...
Colonel, I've got to admit that I admire this young man's principles.
What?
Television productions in the 1960s typically displayed a copyright notice at the end of each episode, and like most things on screen, that information was rendered in Roman numerals. It was a standard practice across the industry and not something viewers would ordinarily think twice about. What made My Favorite Martian unusual is that the copyright notice on its first 7 episodes contained a mistake that would have taken any sharp-eyed viewer only a moment to catch if they happened to be familiar with how Roman numerals work. The copyright date shown on those early episodes read 1943. That combination of letters translates to the year 1943. The show premiered in 1963, which in Roman numerals would be written as MCMLXIII. The difference between the correct version and the version that actually aired comes down to a single letter. The correct date includes an L, which represents 50 in Roman numeral notation. The incorrect version leaves that L out entirely, pushing the date back by exactly 20 years. This error appeared on screen in the first 7 episodes of the series and was not corrected until the 8th episode aired. No official explanation for the mistake appears to have been made public, but the simplest reading is that someone constructing the copyright card either misread the number or made a typographical error during production. It is exactly the kind of small, easy-to-overlook detail that can slip through a busy television production without anyone catching it until the episodes are already finished and broadcast. A viewer who noticed it and did the math might have briefly wondered if they were somehow watching an extremely advanced production from more than 2 decades earlier. Fact 7. The spaceship was designed like a Jaguar.
You mean the X-15 almost ran into your, that thing?
Precisely.
When it came time to design the look of Uncle Martin's spacecraft, the production turned to art director James Halsey, the man responsible for shaping the visual identity of the show. Halsey could have drawn from any number of science fiction references, comic books, or existing ideas about what a flying saucer was supposed to look like. Instead, he went to something much closer to the ground, literally. According to records from the show's production history, Halsey based the overall structure of the Martian spaceship on a 1962 E-Type Jaguar sports car. The E-Type was one of the most visually striking automobiles of its era, widely praised for its long, sleek body and distinctive front end. What caught Halsey's attention specifically was the trademark oval vent opening in the car's front grillwork. That design element became a direct reference point for the front of the spaceship prop. It was a clever piece of design thinking, blending the futuristic associations of a spacecraft with the sleek, modern sensibility of one of the most admired cars of the decade. The writers apparently had some fun with this connection too. In the Season 1 episode Rocket to Mars, there is a moment where Uncle Martin refers to his ship as a little foreign sports job, which reads as a knowing in-joke for anyone aware of the automotive inspiration behind the prop's design. The spaceship went through some changes over the course of the show's run, most notably a redesign of the hatch after the pilot, when the original version that simply fell off the ship was replaced with a new design featuring gull-wing doors and windows. But the core shape, rooted in that Jaguar silhouette, remained the defining look of the vehicle throughout all 3 seasons. Fact 8. The antennae were remote-controlled.
If your Earth virus should get in my antennas...
Which reminds me, you know, what happens if somebody sees those things out?
One of the most iconic visual elements of My Favorite Martian was the pair of retractable antennae that would rise out of the back of Uncle Martin's head whenever he needed to use his Martian powers. It was a simple but effective piece of visual storytelling. Whenever those antennae went up, the audience knew something was about to happen. Behind the scenes, making that effect work consistently required a fairly clever piece of engineering. According to the show's production history, Uncle Martin's antennae were operated entirely by remote control. Someone on the crew would trigger the mechanism, and the antennae would extend or retract on cue, appearing to respond to Walston's performance rather than requiring him to operate them himself. The music accompanying the effect, which was described as a combination of a theremin and another instrument called an ondes martinote, was woven into the show's score to underscore the moment the antennae activated. The sound became as recognizable as the image itself. What makes the remote control detail even more interesting is what happened when Ray Walston took a trip to NASA's Mission Control Facility in Houston. Walston had been invited there as a guest, and the engineers working at Mission Control, people whose entire professional lives were built around advanced technology and complex systems, became fascinated by the antennae mechanism. According to accounts from the show's production team, all of the engineers wanted to know exactly how the antennae were built and made to work. It is a genuinely amusing image. Some of the most technically sophisticated people in the world, working on actual space travel, stopping what they were doing to ask a television actor how the prop on his head was rigged. Fact 9. Shot 5 days a week with no rehearsal.
Regular critics, sir. I'm mostly a newspaper man.
Good, good. Like when they send a boy to do a man's job.
In the world of 1960s television production, there was a fairly standard rhythm to how a weekly sitcom operated. Most shows would spend several days of the week in rehearsal, walking through scenes, learning lines, working out the timing and the blocking, and generally getting comfortable with the material before the cameras started rolling. Some shows rehearsed for 3 or 4 days and then filmed over 1 or 2 days. My Favorite Martian worked in almost the exact opposite way. Because of the volume of special effects built into virtually every episode, the production had no choice but to film on all 5 working days of the week. There simply was not time to carve out dedicated rehearsal days. The special effects sequences were time-consuming and technically demanding, and they had to be filmed alongside all the regular dramatic material. The result was a schedule that left the cast almost no time to prepare for what they were about to perform. Scripts were handed to the actors with barely enough time for a quick run-through before the cameras started rolling. Ray Walston mentioned in interviews that the pace could reach as many as 75 individual setups in a single day, which is an extraordinary number by any standard. Bill Bixby gave a particularly vivid example of how compressed the schedule could get, describing one week when Walston was out sick with the flu and the production kept moving without him. In that span of time, Bixby filmed scenes from 5 completely different episodes, working under 3 separate directors on storylines that had no connection to each other whatsoever. The show's consistency in the face of those conditions was a genuine testament to the professionalism of the entire cast and crew. Fact 10. CBS told writers, "A Martian wouldn't say that."
Will you stop pushing a poor sick man?
Your antennas!
Or make believe I'm a reindeer.
Television networks have always had notes for their writers. That is simply the nature of the business. Producers and writers pitch ideas, networks sign off on them, and then, throughout the production process, network executives weigh in on what is working, what is not, and what they want changed. Sometimes the feedback is useful. Sometimes it is not. And sometimes it produces a piece of television history that writers still talk about decades later. During the run of My Favorite Martian, writer and occasional director James Comack submitted a script to the network and got it back with a note that has since become one of the more memorable examples of network interference in the history of American television. The note from CBS declared, plainly and apparently without irony, that a Martian would not say that. The specifics of which line or lines triggered the note have not been widely documented, but the response itself speaks volumes about the dynamic between the show's creative team and the network. CBS had a fairly clear idea of what it wanted My Favorite Martian to be, and it was not interested in the scripts veering too far from that vision. According to production records and trivia preserved from the show, the network repeatedly pushed back against scripts that it felt were becoming too intellectual. The irony is not hard to spot. A show about a 450-year-old anthropologist from another planet, a character who had been visiting Earth for centuries and observing human civilization, was being told to keep things simple. Comack, for his part, went on to have a successful career as a producer, including work on The Courtship of Eddie's Father, which starred his former My Favorite Martian co-star, Bill Bixby. Fact 11. The time machine became a man, from UNCLE prop.
Uncle Martin, $2 billion. Now, if you know something that the government doesn't...
My Favorite Martian ran for 3 seasons and 107 episodes before CBS canceled it in the spring of 1966. When a show wraps production, all the physical materials from it, the sets, the costumes, the props, get dispersed in various ways. Some things are stored, some are sold, and some find their way into other productions. In the case of one particularly notable prop from My Favorite Martian, the journey after cancellation led it directly onto the set of one of the most popular shows of the same era. During the series, Uncle Martin built a time machine that he kept in a suitcase. The device was officially designated the CCTBS in the show's production materials and appeared in a number of storylines throughout the run. After My Favorite Martian finished production, the time machine prop was repurposed and used as a set piece on The Man from UNCLE, which was also filming at MGM Studios at the time. The connection between the two shows came down to simple geography. My Favorite Martian had filmed its first 2 seasons at Desilu Studios, but moved to MGM for its 3rd and final season. The Man from UNCLE was also based at MGM, which made the prop an easy pickup for a studio already working with familiar materials. It is the kind of behind-the-scenes recycling that was entirely common in the studio system of the 1960s, where sets, furniture, wardrobe, and props routinely moved from one production to another. Viewers watching The Man from UNCLE in its later seasons had no way of knowing that a piece of Uncle Martin's garage was sitting somewhere in the background of a scene. Fact 12. The spaceship sold for $750, then $100,000.
Professor Newton Jennings declares that if life does exist, it is on the lowest and most primitive level.
The spaceship prop from My Favorite Martian had a long and winding life after the show ended. When production wrapped in 1966, the prop eventually fell out of circulation and drifted away from the studio world entirely. For a time, there was a rumor that it had wound up in the collection of a museum called the Plains of Fame in Buena Park, California, but that could not be confirmed. What was confirmed years later was that the ship turned up at a car auction. In the summer of 1985, the original wooden and fiberglass spaceship prop was sold at a Hollywood car auction held at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. The final price was $750 for a prop that had been the centerpiece of a network television show for 3 full seasons. A ship that had been rebuilt in fiberglass and steel and weighed close to 400 pounds, $750 is a strikingly small amount of money. It suggests that whoever was selling it either did not know what they had or simply needed to move it and was not in a position to wait for a better offer. The story did not end there. Decades later, the spaceship surfaced again, this time in considerably more prominent hands. In December of 2018, magician and entertainer David Copperfield purchased the prop at auction for $100,000. That is a price increase of more than 13,000% from what it sold for in 1985. Copperfield, who is known for collecting significant pieces of entertainment history, presumably saw in the ship exactly what that 1985 buyer apparently did not. The prop had gone from $750 to six figures in just over 3 decades. Fact 13. Stage 10 later became Star Trek's Alien Planets.
Oh, I'm standing here talking to an empty chair.
So I notice.
For the first 2 seasons of My Favorite Martian, from 1963 through 1965, the show filmed at Desilu Studios on a soundstage designated as Stage 10. Desilu was a major television production facility of the era, jointly founded by Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and it hosted a number of significant productions during the 1960s. Stage 10 was where the apartment shared by Tim O'Hara and Uncle Martin was constructed, where Mrs. Brown's living room was built, and where the bulk of the show's interior scenes were filmed over those first 2 seasons. When My Favorite Martian moved to MGM Studios for its 3rd and final season in order to take advantage of color filming facilities, Stage 10 at Desilu was freed up. The very next year, in 1966, a new production moved in. That production was Star Trek, the original series. According to production records from the show's fan history, Stage 10 was specifically the stage that Star Trek used to shoot its alien planet scenes, the locations that required the crew to build unusual and otherworldly environments that could not be recreated on a standing set. The stage that had been home to a grounded Martian trying to pass as a regular person in California was now being used to depict distant worlds across the galaxy. When Paramount Studios eventually took over the Desilu lot, all of the sound stages were renumbered, so Stage 10 no longer carries that designation today. The stage it corresponds to now sits on the western side of the lot, directly next to the stage that served as the home of the Starship Enterprise during Star Trek's original run. Fact 14. Walston and Bixby reunited as the Hulk meets a Martian.
Look before, or you'll find yourself behind. You see what I'm getting at, don't you?
Sure. You don't want to help me. All right, fine.
Ray Walston and Bill Bixby spent 3 seasons working together on My Favorite Martian. And despite Walston's complicated feelings about the role, the 2 men developed a genuine friendship that lasted long after the show ended. That friendship found its way back onto television years later in a way that gave longtime fans of the original series a moment of clear and deliberate acknowledgement. Bill Bixby went on to star in another long-running CBS series called The Incredible Hulk, in which he played scientist David Banner, a man who transforms into the Hulk whenever he becomes sufficiently agitated. The show ran from 1978 to 1982, and during its 3rd season, Walston appeared as a guest star. The episode in question was the 37th episode of the series, and its title left absolutely no ambiguity about why Walston had been cast in it. The episode was called My Favorite Magician. The reference to their earlier work together was unmistakable and clearly intentional. What makes the connection even more interesting is a detail that the show's classic TV database preserves about both men's lives off camera. Both Ray Walston and Bill Bixby were actual members of a professional magicians club in Hollywood. Their shared interest in magic was not just a behind-the-scenes curiosity, but something they actively pursued as members of an organized group. The episode title nodded to the old show while also tapping into something genuinely real about the 2 actors. 9 years after My Favorite Martian ended, the 2 had also been briefly reunited on a game show called Masquerade Party, where Walston appeared in disguise and Bixby was among the panelists trying to identify the guests. Fact 15. Season 4 scripts were recycled into a cartoon.
Those things you talked about last night didn't sound like scatterbrained rubbish to me.
Your teacher said that?
In front of the whole class.
My Favorite Martian was canceled by CBS in March of 1966, and the final episode aired a few months later. The cancellation, like many in television, came with some unfinished business. The production had been moving forward with plans for a fourth season, and writers had already begun developing scripts for episodes that were never going to be filmed now that the show was ending. Those scripts were not thrown away. They sat in storage, still the property of Jack Chertock's production company, which retained all rights and copyrights to the show. Several years later, in 1973, the animation studio Filmation produced an animated version of the show called My Favorite Martians, and a number of those unused fourth season scripts were incorporated into the cartoon. The animated series aired on Saturday mornings on CBS, which was the same network that had canceled the live-action original. It ran for 16 episodes and featured the main characters from the original, including Tim, Uncle Martin, Mrs. Brown, and Detective Brennan, though Brennan's character was described as considerably different from the version viewers remembered. A new character was added to appeal to younger audiences: Uncle Martin's teenage Martian nephew, Andromeda, nicknamed Andy, who had only one antenna and therefore lesser powers than his uncle. Neither Bill Bixby nor Ray Walston provided voices for the cartoon. Bixby was committed to another project at the time, and Walston, still trying to put some distance between himself and the Uncle Martin role, declined to participate. Jack Chertock was credited as a creative consultant on the animated series, keeping the original producer connected to the property he had first pulled from the bottom of a pile more than a decade earlier.